Hey BookTube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March, and yes, this is one of 2 videos I'm putting out this week, a tag on Tag Tuesday. And I have a shout out for this one. This is Ryan from Book Time with Ryan. He is the originator of the whale tag, which is today's tag for Tag Tuesday. And Ryan is a big fan of books about whales, books about the ocean, the sea. I first discovered him because he did a review of one of my favorite books of all time, which is Ahab's Wife by Sina Jeter Naslund. And he's talked about Moby Dick. He's a fan of Herman Melville. I also found him by looking at a review for Bartleby the Scrivener by Melville, which I really enjoyed. And so he's just a very down-to-earth, smart, well-spoken creator, and I urge you and encourage you to go check out his channel. I think he has around 600 subscribers right now, but he's been on BookTube for a little bit. So go and give him some views, subscribe, and I think you'll enjoy his channel. Hey BookTube, it's me again, Kim from Middle of the Book March, and today's tag is the whale tag. As I said in my intro, it was originally created by Ryan at Book Time with Ryan, and I was tagged by Courtney at Tangible Reads, who I've also shouted out in the past, so please go and check out both of their channels with the links that I have down below. And I always have to make sure this is on, that I'm actually filming, because once in a while I've realized I'm not really filming right now, I'm just talking to myself. So, I'm going to do the whale tag, and this is one, I told myself only pick one book for each prompt. Nope. Did I do it? Nope. I have a giant pile of books, and you'll see why, because one of them led me down several trails, and let's get going. So, these are all prompts that have to do with whales. And I think Ryan put this out last year because it was around Earth Day of 2022. So, here are the prompts. Number 1, blue whale. The blue whale is the largest, heaviest animal on Earth ever. What's the longest book you've ever read or want to read? And or what is the heaviest subject you've read about? Courtney mentioned the Bible, and she's absolutely right. I've read the Bible more than once, a few times. And yeah, that's got everything. It has sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's got everything, and very heavy. Honestly, there are some wonderful, hopeful parts in it as well. If you know, you know. Some of the longest, The Count of Monte Cristo, very clearly. I've read this twice. Just read this with my book group at the beginning of the year. This has 1,200 and... I think this has 1,243 pages for The Count of Monte Cristo. The longest book I own that I want to read just for the fun of it has 1,474 pages, and this is A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. I've owned this book for a really long time, and it's staring at me. It's looking at me from my shelf. So I want to get to that one sometime. Prompt number 2, sperm whale. Sperm whales routinely dive to a depth of 2,000 feet to feed on squid, but can dive to a depth of 10,000 feet. That's impressive. What is a book that has motivated you to look deeper into a subject, character, situation, or series? Okay, here's the prompt where I have a pile of books, and this is going to look completely disorganized, and I think it is. So, this book came out in 2018, and I started BookTube at the very end of 2019. But everybody was reading this, and this is Circe by Madeline Miller. I love this book. Had a great time with it, and it brought back my love of mythology and the Greeks and the classics, and I really had a good time with this book. And it's just beautiful. It's like this copper-colored foil. That's the end papers, deckled edges. It's just a great book. I loved it. But that sent me down trails for the last 3 years, and I'm not kidding. I found a used art copy of The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller shortly after I read Circe, and I found this in a used bookshop. I loved this book, and I think more than Circe. But I was entranced by her writing and her characters and all of that. So I read those 2 books, And like I said, it sparked my childhood love of mythology and classics. And I just started looking for other books. And there's so many retellings out there. I also read The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. That one wasn't so much of a success for me, but it was another retelling that was very interesting. Pat Barker is a very good writer. And so there's all kinds of other retellings that have come out in the meantime, so many, but what I did is I went back to the classics. And I picked up The Odyssey by Homer. This particular translation is Emily Wilson. This is the paperback with deckled edges. So yeah, I picked this up and I want to read this. I'm shooting for the end of this year, but before I read that one, I want to read kind of the prequel. Sorry about the tripod. The prequel to the Odyssey, which is the Iliad. This one is a translation by Robert Fagles, but I actually just ordered the Caroline Alexander translation. Not because not because of the man-woman thing, but I do want to get a different perspective. And some of the newer translations that have been published, translated by women, have a fresh new perspective. So honestly, this one is in hardcover and it's super heavy. And I ordered the Caroline Alexander translation in paperback. What else have I bought? Well, I also found the Aeneid by Virgil, translated by Sarah Rudin. I told you, I'm going all out, people. And I have to say, a lot of these purchases were thanks to Shelley from Shelley Swearingen, because she is a very big proponent of the ancient classics. So I ended up getting several volumes of Euripides plays. This one is the Bacchae and other plays. This one is the Trojan Women and other plays. And this one is Medea and other plays, which I'm really excited about. I'm losing space. I also picked up this giant copy of Aristophanes, the complete plays. I mean, come on, this is a really long rabbit trail. I finished Sophocles, the Oedipus complex with watching Shelley's series that she did on this volume of plays. Antigone was just glorious. And I just finished 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, which I absolutely loved. And I now have 2 of her other books on order. I have Pandora's Jar, which is nonfiction, and I also have the Jocasta's Children, or the Children of Jocasta. People, I'm telling you. And guess what I did? We went book shopping yesterday. I'm filming this on Sunday, the 16th, and we went book shopping yesterday. I picked up Stone Blind. Yes, I've got it in my greedy little hands. And I also picked up Beowulf by Seamus Heaney. I'd lost track of how many books were in that pile. So yeah, that major rabbit hole on that one. And I love it. Okay, number 3, Humpback Whale. Humpback whales sing long, complex songs they have in common with other individual humpback whales. These songs can change uniformly for entire groups of whales. What is a book that changed meaning for you over the years, and why did it change? Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. I read this so many years ago. This is her one novel that she published. I read this, and it's autobiographical, highly autobiographical. I read this so many years ago and thought it was okay. You know, it was kind of weird. And, you know, the main character, Eleanor Greenwood, Esther Greenwood, begins with an E, I know, really had a very challenging life and situations, but I thought it was okay. Well, I buddy read this with Heidi last year, the year before, came back at me with a completely different effect and perspective, and I realized after reading Red Comet how much nuance and how much of Sylvia Plath's reality went into this novel, and had so much more meaning this time around. And I think, you know, with maturity comes a better understanding of what you're actually reading and what it means. So yeah, that was a big one. Number 4 is Orca. Orcas, or killer whales, are incredibly smart social whales, dolphins. What's a book you felt was especially smart, fiction or nonfiction, and made you really think? This is fiction. It is The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. Now, this is kind of billed as sci-fi. This was published in 1996. This is the story. I think it's very, very smart and intelligent. It's the science fiction story of a priest who goes into space to communicate with a quote-unquote alien community. Emilio Sandoz, he leads a 21st century scientific mission to a newly discovered extraterrestrial culture. They want to encourage communication, and they want to be able to talk to other peoples out in the universe. But what ends up happening is something completely different. Now, coming from a theological background, there's a lot of commentary in here about missionary work and religion and science, either combined or contrasted. It is extremely smartly done. It is a brutal read if you've read it. I love this book. It brings up so many things to think about. It has so many opportunities for discussion and analysis, and it's just a really good book. It's an excellent story with a fantastic plot. Let's see. The next one is prompt 5, which is Beluga. Belugas are nicknamed the canaries of the seas because of the sounds they make. What's a book you wanted to talk to others about after reading it, and why? Greenwood by Michael Christie. I read this book and wanted to tell everybody I knew about it, and I think I did. I tried to tell as many people as possible about this book. And I think I got a few booktubers to read it, but I read this as a buddy read with Leo from A Little Book Life at the time. He now is on Instagram. But this book is just lovely. And the formatting is so interesting because it's set kind of a way off in the Canadian island, and it's a forestry family. But what it did was, this is the beginning of the book, and it's the cross-section of a tree that's been cut. But it starts off in the future in 2038, and then it goes back through the past, and it goes to 1908, and then it goes back into the future again. You can't even see what I'm doing. So it was so interesting the way he put it together. The writing is beautiful. The plot is spectacular. The way he put it together, again, is such a smart book. But it was so good, and this is the kind of book that I can recommend to just about anybody. And it's a gorgeous book. This is like another copper foil. That's the edges of that book. And it's just so good. And because this is a book about forestry and conservation, the entire book is produced from reclaimed materials and the types of paper it uses. So it's just so good. I just wanted to get on a soapbox or a stage and start yelling at everybody to read that book. Now, the next one, prompt 6, is Narwhal. Male narwhals, known as the unicorns of the seas, have 2 teeth, including one long spiraling tooth that can grow nearly 9 feet long. What's a book you heard great things about before reading, only to discover it was less magical after reading it? I just read this book for March of the Mammoths. This is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. It's literally magical. It's a fantasy novel, really super long one. And I did finish it, but it definitely, the luster left early in the book. It's kind of all over the place. For me, slightly anticlimactic. A lot of threads of stories that she used coincidences to tie together didn't really cohesively work, in my opinion. And it was kind of a disappointment, but yeah, this is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. But unfortunately, it didn't quite work for me. The next one, prompt 7, Bowhead Whale. While it's evident bowhead whales live well beyond 100 years of age, there's evidence that they may live to be 200 years old. What is the oldest book in your collection, or what book has been in your collection the longest? These 2 books, you can kind of I don't know, consider them children's books. But these are books that I've had since childhood. And these are copies of Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. This one is just an old book. This is, aged and yellowed and first published in 1946. It's got all of the, the vintage drawings, but this is just an old book that I think my parents found at a flea market, and I just have never gotten rid of it. I have a bigger copy of Alice in Wonderland combined with Through the Looking Glass, but this is one of the oldest books I own. Childhood, I don't even remember, maybe I was 9 or 10 when I got that book. And this is the same. It looks like a Franklin Mint copy. I don't think it is. But this is like this red binding copy of Through the Looking Glass and what Alice found there. Again, it has the same old drawings, the vintage drawings, but this has fallen apart, and I've had this about the same length of time as I've had this copy, and I read through this several times, and I was always really easy on my books, but this just fell apart because it's old, and I will keep these as long as I possibly can. Prompt 8. Atlantic gray whale. Atlantic gray whales were sadly wiped out by humans. Today, only Pacific gray whales remain. Save the whales! What's one book that's either out of print or out of fashion that you wish would make a comeback? It's not out of print or out of fashion, but I have some thoughts. This is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I'm actually rereading it currently with the Critical Chicks book group. Now, this book is not out of print, but I have been looking for a antiquarian copy of this in the same format. I have several other George Eliot novels, antique copies that all look like they have the same design, and I've been trying to find that with Middlemarch. I haven't been able to. But my thoughts on this are, this is due for a better adaptation, whether it's a movie, probably not a movie in several parts, or just a mini-series. Put this together like you did Sense and Sensibility or Pride and Prejudice, BBC. But there is an adaptation out there that is horrible, absolutely horrible, and I hate it, and I really want somebody to pick up this book and create the adaptation in a really nice way. But the book is not out of print. Now, this is a bonus prompt, and the last one, Moby Dick. Moby Dick was the great white sperm whale Captain Ahab never caught. What is a book you want to own but haven't found or bought? What's stopping you from hooking that book? I don't have a book that... let me back up. I've got so many books that I want to own but I haven't bought yet. This one I had been looking at for weeks. This is Stone Blind. That's on the Women's Prize, long listed on the Women's Prize. And after finishing 1,000 Ships, I was like tingling to go buy it, so I did. But I don't typically have one book that, I'm dying to buy. I keep a list of my books on my TBRs that I really want to get to, but I don't need to go out and buy that. But I've read this question differently, and the question at the end, it says, what's stopping you from hooking that book? I actually have Moby Dick. I have several copies. This is one of them. And I've been meaning to read this for many, many, many years. And I can tell I'm on the edge. I'm on the verge of picking it up. What's stopping me from hooking it? Probably other readers' opinions, because I've heard so much about the deep and long commentary on whaling, all of the details, and which is fine. I don't think I'll have a problem with that, but I also hear so many fantastic reviews of this classic, and I keep going back and forth. I keep weighing which, there's so many opinions and so many thoughts out there, but I haven't picked it up yet. So maybe this year, maybe I'll read this book along with the Odyssey or the Iliad and the Odyssey. I actually have plans to have a buddy read for the Iliad. So I don't know. That's kind of what's getting me from not hooking Moby Dick. No pun intended. That's it. Those are the prompts. And the very end is to tag 5 booktubers. Now, this one is So this was so easy. I'm tagging Micah from Micah Cummins. We had a buddy read with the book The Breath of a Whale, and he has read so many books about whales and the ocean. So I'm tagging you, Micah, if you're watching. I'm tagging Nikki from Red Dot Reads. I'm tagging Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Tagging Heidi from My Reading Life. And Caitlin from Bandy's Books. So that's it for this tag for the whale tag. Let me know if you have any comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.